Hi there, my name is Denny, and welcome to the Speak Dicely podcast, the show where I get together with other tabletop enthusiasts and we speak dicely together. The past few episodes, we've been talking about the different D&D classes and the types of characters you can make using these archetypes. But today, we're going to be taking a break from that, and we're going to talk more about the story a character goes on. What events in the story cause them to venture forth? How do they react to the world, and what choices do they make? And joining me for this topic of character growth are Christy Clow and Dallis MacKenzie. Hey there, folks.
Hello.
Happy to have you in.
Happy to be here, as always. I feel it's been so long since I sat down with the two of you.
Yeah, definitely. It's like we never talk anymore. You know what I mean?
And you know, I feel like this is the first time that I've had the pair of you in at the same time on this podcast.
I think that's true.
Yeah, I think so. Wow. What's that about?
Friendship, am I right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I was intrigued by this topic because, we were just trying to find something to talk about today, and character growth was the choice of topic here. And, you know, I think this is going to be a great episode, too, because we all play together in a group. So I think there's going to be plenty of interesting conversations to be had here.
Well, I certainly have a lot to say, so...
Yeah, I don't know. That's like the whole reason I play D&D is for the character growth.
Yes, I agree with that. It's like, I can't imagine not wanting to have my character go through like cool journeys and stuff. So,
Yeah, that's fair. Awkward moment. Christy, can I get you to turn up your audio a little bit?
Oh my God.
Rank it!
How's this?
Oh, a little too much.
Oh, no.
For the folks at home, we're doing a kind of experiment. For the people who listen to the podcast on YouTube, you may have noticed there's a video element now.
What?
We are present.
Can I make that joke every time? Every time you're like, we're being recorded. What?
Excuse me?
What? We're not just talking?
I thought we were just having
a friendly conversation.
Yeah, like a fun hangout. It's fine.
I thought it was weird you made this whole overlay for this fun hangout. But...
Could you imagine? So fun.
Oh, yeah, I do this just in my spare time because, you know, I've got so much time on my hands.
You have plenty, so...
Yeah, I mean, I need to talk to you about that. I think you have too much free time.
Yeah, maybe be like a little bit busier.
Oh, boy. Well, how about I interrupt this jab at all of my free time with asking you both, what is character growth?
Oh,
Christy?
Yeah, that's right. Put me on blast because I came off really cocky about talking about this sort of stuff. Golly. To me, I think it's like it's very entwined with like the journey that the character goes on through the campaign. And at least personally, like I think it's typically like the unexpected things that happen, because I find often I'm kind of surprised by where my character goes ultimately and the things that happen and how they change. And I think that's the most fun part. Like you can write a backstory, but it's not going to necessarily dictate like then who they are in the world and how the world influences them. So
yeah. No, I totally agree. I think character growth is such like a fun part of the like collaboration of D&D where the character backstory is my own creation, but the growth and the journey that the character goes through is so much an amalgamation of all of the different players and DM and everything that happens in the world. Dice rolls.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, like character growth is... because we all come into a D&D game or any other tabletop system, like this is the character I've made. And I think really what we all strive, or like what the goal of the experience is to see how that character changes as we explore the world in their shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for me, I think like D&D is kind of like an acting like lesson for me all the time as well, an acting workshop. So I think that's what I really like about playing a character is like trying to like genuinely feel how they're feeling out situations and how they like authentically react to those situations. But I imagine as well that there are other people who don't feel that way about D&D as well, who do come in like who are really excited about combat and like that kind of stuff, and who maybe don't care so much about the character growth aspect of it.
I think that's really likely, but I personally cannot relate.
No, me neither. Me neither. But I think that's probably a way a lot of people play the game, and a totally valid way of playing as well.
Oh, for sure. I just think like, I don't know, having, I guess, like tasted like what it's like to have, you know, an in-depth character and to feel the way they're feeling and stuff. I can't actually play in games anymore that doesn't offer me that. So.
Yeah.
I know it's so unfortunate to like have had such a like story and character driven experiences where it's just like if I enter a game where it's just kind of like combat after combat or just kind of just playing the game, I'm like I find it much less enjoyable because I want to explore a story.
Yeah, 100%.
But I'm so thankful for the people that I get to play with that like are so on board with this as well, and will like I don't have to be afraid of like, you know, getting too emotionally invested or like getting too excited about the game. Like the people I play with are always so on board, so I'm very thankful for you and for all the other people I play with. Let me do that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like something that you do need to have a supportive group to do, because if you're in a group with a bunch of people who are just there for combat, and you're like, all right, let's kind of unpack some of this trauma that my character has. Yeah, I am gonna be crying at least once today, and they're all kind of like, oh, I was gonna hit stuff with my axe, so
yeah,
it makes it more difficult, I think. So having like a safe space to explore those things is key.
Yeah. Murdering things with axes is a lot more difficult when somebody's around crying. So it's very rude of you, Christy, to jump in on those games.
Sorry. Although I do think it'd be like a really interesting character who is someone who hits people with axes, but is crying while they do it.
Oh,
very like morally conflicted.
That sounds horrifying.
I like this guy.
I don't know. I think it sounds interesting to me. It's whatever.
All right.
Well, when Nell dies in this campaign.
Don't.
Sorry.
Never gonna die because I have too many things I want to do with her. I will not allow it.
For the folks out there who have not yet experienced our Play Dicely campaign, follow us on Twitch at twitch.tv/DicelyDND and keep up with our with the campaign that the three of us are in. Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, like, what are you even doing? Like, I honestly, I'm fine if you leave what you're watching right now to go and start watching Dicely and then come back and then finish this.
Yeah.
That's fine.
You could see like the full length of the video or podcast episode you're listening to be like 2 hours. None of this is on topic anymore. We just wanted to get this pitch in, and now we're just going to hang out.
We're just going to stare at you now until you go do it.
Please watch our show. It's good. Thank you.
Kind of getting us back onto topic, though. So something I wanted to touch on before we went too far into this is that there is a distinction between character growth and character development. And I wasn't aware of this before I started researching for this podcast episode. And I guess, like, we've already touched on what character growth is. It's the change, the experience that an individual goes through that makes them different from when they started their journey or their story. Whereas character development is more like, in D&D terms, the backstory, ideals, flaws, personality traits. It's the facts of one's kind of background that show us the truths of why they are who they are when we first meet them.
That's really interesting. I've never heard this distinction either.
Yeah, I don't think I have either, but now that you've said it out loud, it does make a lot of sense to me. I guess they're pretty like intrinsically linked in a way, because I think laying the foundation through development is what then kind of gives me the freedom to allow that character to grow in sessions. So.
Yeah, and actually that was one of my notes here as well, is that in some ways character development leads to character growth. And who knows, I might very well be incorrect about all this, and some literary expert's going to be like, well, you spent like maybe 5 minutes looking this up on the internet, didn't you? And I'll be like, guilty. And
I don't know, Teni seems like an expert to me, so maybe just don't bother fact checking.
Yeah, I was believing you.
Yeah.
But that's what I seem to have to gathered rather quickly. And when we talk about character growth, this is more about the like internal character growth as opposed to like the changing of external factors in one's life, like changing from if you started your journey as a lower class citizen and becoming an upper class citizen. That's not really character growth. It's just actually I think that's just kind of changing character development.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I do agree that like growth is very internal for sure. Although it can be dictated by like what's happening in the environment, because maybe like if your situation has changed, it influences how then your character reacts to certain things or what it is that they want, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, like going back to that example I just said, if you get rich and become a dick, that is character growth for the worse.
That's true. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I was just wondering as well, you just reminded me of like, is like the level up system in D&D, is that not just like built in character growth? Like I think of character growth as like personality wise, I guess, but is not the level up system also just character growth?
Well, I would say yes, because with character growth, it's experiences and learning, which is what progressing in a class is. It's learning new skills, learning new abilities, like mechanically. And this was something I was going to ask you guys later on. But do you always incorporate the level ups into your ideas of character growth?
Clearly not. It just occurred to me.
Fair enough.
Before Play Dicely, I didn't really ever. I don't know, because like the other character I played like long term is the one I talked about in the Wizard episode, Ravi. For the most part, it was just kind of like, okay, and now I have some like better spells or whatever. And the only time it really came up was we did an arc in the Feywild, and I became like a champion of one of the Fey beings there, and then leveled up like shortly after. So I decided to take a level in Paladin to reflect that. But on the whole, like it never really, like it does make sense to me, but it never really like came up at all. Whereas like in Play Dicely, just by the nature of multi-classing, every time I level up, it's only been once, but going forward, I know every time I'm going to level up, I'm going to be like, okay, what does this mean if I choose one or the other? Like, and as you know, I was very conflicted about how to do it. And I made it very complicated for myself, but I have to justify everything now. So, you know.
Yeah, I've had that struggle with multi-class characters before. The character I was playing in Logan's campaign in my other home game is a multi-class fighter sorcerer. And I only was really interested in leveling up her sorcery, and I felt like I did have to keep like in the campaign. I'm like, I have to cast magic at some point in this episode so that I can justify leveling up in sorcery. It's like it doesn't make sense if she only ever hits things with her sword.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I don't know. I think it does add like a layer of like complexity to it, which maybe is probably better for more experienced players, which would explain why, like, when I was first starting out with Ravi, like I wasn't that experienced. And so it's just kind of like, okay, you level up, that's what you do. Now she has different spells. But now that I've kind of, I don't know, just devoted the last like 3 years to everything D&D related, I'm like, ooh, let's make this like a little crunchy now. Like, what does it mean and how does it influence things? So
well, yeah, I'm excited to see more of that in the Dicely campaign, because I think like I did it a little bit in this level up as well. It's the first time that I have ever really thought about like what does a level up actually mean in like reality for my character. So I'm excited to see, and I think, you know, the players in this campaign are doing that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to see how more and more of that comes up the more we level up.
Yeah, it's gonna get really interesting, I think. So,
well, since we're talking a bit more specifically about characters, can you both tell us about a character you've played that has experienced character growth?
All of them.
Yeah. I like, how do you play a character that doesn't experience some form of growth, I guess?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I simply don't understand. Again, I guess it comes back to the people who are just there to fight. That's fine. But I think, I don't know, I think there's like a real exciting element to it that you could be like, oh, here's kind of like a moral quandary that I'm going to give my character, and I don't know the answer in advance to it. So you kind of get to figure it out during the sessions. I see a lot of potential for Nell, but I think like not a whole lot has truly happened yet. Like I can see like that more is going to come for sure. This is like slightly parallel to what we were saying, if that's okay. But
I thought I was going to get spoilers.
Oh, no. Please. I wouldn't be that cautious. I would just say it fully, confidently, and by accident. It would just be very embarrassing. Yeah, something I've realized that like it takes me a few sessions as the character to start actually like be like knowing them enough and being in them enough to actually, I think, to have them start experiencing growth. Because like the first few sessions of Play Dicely, I was kind of thinking like, okay, I know like these three things are true about Nell. What does that mean for how she interacts? So I would, I don't know, respond to something. And then afterwards I'd be like, is that actually what she would have done? Like, I'm not really sure. And I think eventually like, it just starts to feel a bit more innate. And then that's when the character growth gets to surprise me. And I love those moments. So I think 2 episodes ago, I guess this is spoilers for Dicely. I Play Dicely. So if you haven't watched it, again, I already told you to leave. So why are you still here?
They're not here anymore. It's okay. They already left. They're watching it.
But like the fact that like she had that wild magic surge in front of everyone with the horse duck and then just had like a full meltdown. And like I was not expecting that to be the way that like everyone kind of saw what was going on. But I also didn't expect that to be her reaction because she spent so long like trying to be like stoic and like hiding it. And like had very like meticulously planned, like, okay, like this is how I'll tell, this is like what I'll feel comfortable and stuff. And then just like it all went to shit and she just couldn't handle it. And she's like, you know what? I'm a fucking child and I simply like can't, I'm overloaded right now and I can't deal. And when that happened, I was like, so that shows me a bit more about kind of like how she feels about her position in the family. Like she's in the middle. So she is like equally like an older sibling and like nurturing, but also like a little bit below status with people. So yeah, I learned something from that and I thought that was very interesting. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to not jump ahead, but I think a lot of like what I like about character growth is I feel like I build a character and I don't necessarily have an idea of where they're going to go, but I have like a goal or a flaw for them. And then a lot of character growth is based around either overcoming that flaw or conquering that goal or whatever it is. I'm thinking of Shadow as an example of a character that had some character growth in him. It's a character I've talked about on this podcast a couple times now. But he was a character who started off as he was like a 14-year-old tabaxi rogue, and his dad was the greatest pirate captain in the whole world, or so he thought at least. I don't actually know if that's true, but that's what Shadow thinks. And he was supposed to like go on a sea trip with his father, and then at the very last moment, his dad was like, "Look, kid, like you're not cut out for this. You're not coming." And that was Shadow's whole thing moving forward, was like, I'm going to prove to my dad that I am a great pirate. I'm a great pirate. And that was like him at the start of the campaign, was just like this like fresh-faced kid, like steals a boat and goes off and conquers mermaids and steals gold. And Denny shakes his head, but he was the worst character in the entire session.
You mean me or you?
Both of us. Yeah, but and then as you know, time went on and things became a lot more real than I think Shadow ever expected them to be. I think like he was just like, I'm gonna get gold and show my dad, and then suddenly we were saving the world. And I think it was a big shift for Shadow to be like, I think there's like bigger fish to fry in the world, first of all. But I think like by the end of that campaign, I even got to a point where Shadow was like, I don't think I'm supposed to be an adventurer, to be totally honest. Like, he was a good fighter and stuff, but he got to the end. I think he had like so much like, we had a lot of like heated arguments on that boat where Shadow was like trying to maintain status because he was like, I've got to be the captain of this ship in case my dad ever comes back and sees me. I've got to be the captain. And then by the end, he was like, you know what? I just saved the world. I'm gonna go marry my hot queen fiance, and we're gonna be done with this. I'm just gonna go be a prince now. Goodbye.
I think there is like a very interesting thing to that kind of like character growth arc that happens in D&D campaigns, because it is kind of like a really good almost like tip in a way if you're writing a novel eventually, is that the whole thing is like you ask yourself like what is the character's goal, and then like how do they not get it, or how does like it potentially change, which I think is like just kind of naturally happens a lot of the time in D&D games. So it's kind of you're learning as it's happening. Because for Ravi, the initial like goal that I wrote into my backstory was that she was trying to find this like great aunt of hers in the city that had the magical university, because she was the only other person in her family that had magic. So she didn't actually know her, but she had like a letter she was going off of. And then, yeah, I got there and she wasn't there. And it was kind of like trying to figure out what happened. And eventually, like, we did come across her in the campaign. And I was like a little bit let down because I was like, this is so not how I imagined this interaction going. But then ultimately, I was kind of like, well, I think it makes sense because at this point in the campaign, like, I'm already with the university, like I don't need her to make introductions for me anymore. And I've already got my own path. So I have kind of outgrown the need for like this mentor in this way. So yeah, I think like the best moments of character growth happen when you're truly like not expecting it, or it's the complete opposite of what you had envisioned originally, which is why dice rolls can be so impactful to it. So
totally.
Yeah. A character I played that experienced character growth, like this channel's kind of main character example is a cleric I played called Mickey Tumble Run. And he started off very much like Shadow, like a very naive kid. Like he was a chef that worked at his father's restaurant. I don't know why I had trouble finding that word. I love food. And so he went off and became an adventurer, but he was very much like raised on like fantasy stories, like fairy tales, like good and evil. And he was like, I want to be a hero. And there was an instance where we ended up in like a kind of a fae village. And it turned out that like so many of the citizens had been like tied up into a blood contract with like a hag that lived nearby. And they said that if anybody broke their contract or whatever, that they would just straight up die. And we ended up encountering the hag, but we knew, or they ended up like being like, if you kill me, everybody in the contract will also die. And so we spent like an entire maybe like 3 hours of a session actually doing a pros and cons, and my guy was just like, this is absurd, this entity is evil and it must be vanquished. So I initiated a fight and we killed them, and it, as it said, ended up like just, I think it was like hundreds of people ended up falling dead in that town. And that was a huge shift for my character, being like, I did this. Yep. Mickey became a very sad boy.
I think I mentioned this potentially in the, I guess it was the wizard, or it was probably the wizard episode, because I feel like that's when I talked about Robbie the most. But we had just had a session where I typically like to play very like impulsive characters. Like Nell is like kind of the first like one that I've really like tried not to have an impulsive character. But yeah, we were in this like big fight to reclaim this town, and like me and like the head of the town, like we're chasing like the big bad that had taken it over. And we got down to like the hull of a ship, and he had this big crystal, and it was pretty obvious like if he did something with it, it would be really bad. And so I had like one high level spell slot, and I was like, okay, I'll cast disintegrate because, you know, that would most likely be good to go. I didn't know he had armor that gave him advantage, and so it just didn't hit. It didn't land at all. And if that happens to disintegrate, it's a waste of a spell. And so then he hit the crystal and like blew up the whole harbor, and a lot of people died. And yeah, it made me feel really bad. And even though like our DM like role played like that the head of the town was like, there was nothing you could have done. Like I tried to stop him too, whatever. I just felt super guilty. And then one of my friends in character said like, oh, like Robbie's always making like impulsive decisions, and for once, like I just wish you would think in advance about something. And then I was like, well, I have to go be sad now, because Robbie was just like, damn, you're so right. And so then the next like chapter of our story now, I've like basically just stalked like utility spells and stuff. I'm like, I'm just going to give everyone a fighting chance, and I'm not going to just try and like get off like the biggest spell that makes the biggest explosion or whatever, because clearly that's not working out. So, but it really like it hurt my character's feelings and my own.
Yeah.
Like, damn, you're so right.
Yeah, I have one like this too. This happened very recently. I don't even want to tell you about it because I'm really embarrassed about what I did.
I can't wait to hear it now.
No, it was really horrible. It was such a bad mistake. But we were playing, so in Logan's campaign, Zesh is dead. Zesh had died. So we're on a revival quest. So I had built a temp character. Ideally, you know, we're going to find a diamond. We're going to get back. We're going to revive Zesha. Life's going to be good. But so I had this like cleric, this forge cleric, who worshipped Gond, who's this like god of creation and building and mechanics and stuff. And we were traveling down in like the mines trying to find diamonds, and we found a dragon and a dragon horde. And we managed to talk our way through the dragon, and he was like, cool, like, you know, we can find you a diamond. Just go take care of this like drow problem or this beholder problem or something. I don't even remember exactly what we were supposed to be doing. So we're like, cool. And we like passed by the dragon, and that was the end of the session. And we came back the next session and we were like, we don't actually have any of the materials to deal with this right now. So we're like, let's just leave, get all the stuff, and then come back and we'll deal with this. And we went back through the dragon horde, but the dragon wasn't there this time. And as we walked past, Logan, our DM, was like, hey, Dallis, you would notice that there's a Gonzman in that pile of gold there. And Gonzmans are these like religious relics. And so Maeve, who is a worshiper of Gond, is like, well, could I fix it? And I was like, yeah, if you like took it with you and like, you know, fixed it up, I think it'd probably work. And I was like, cool, neat, yeah, I'll take it. Which was like the worst choice I've ever made in D&D. Don't steal from a dragon horde. Don't ever do that. But anyways, I did. And of course the dragon swoops down and is like, you dinguses, I've been watching the whole time. And we were like, yeah, that totally makes sense. But so we got this giant dragon fight, and it killed 2 player characters. 2 player characters died at this encounter, and I was like, I truly like was trying to sacrifice Maeve the entire time. I was like, this is 1000% my fault. Like, I'm gonna run over here and wave my arms really big, like, come kill Maeve. And Logan's like, no, Dallis, this is your fault. You're going to suffer for this, and kill 2 of the other player characters. Brutal. Yeah, and I was like, as Maeve, I was like, as myself, I felt horrible, but also as Maeve, I was like, what does this mean for a cleric? Like, she was trying to do something to be right by her god, like to please her god, and it killed 2 people. And I'm like, honestly, like, I don't think she's religious anymore. Like, I think we leave this cave, I don't think she's a cleric anymore. I think she's fully like, Gond, what the fuck? I was just doing this for you. Like, why did you kill these people? So anyways, I don't play Maeve anymore. I killed 2 people and I retired the character.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is brutal. You're not wrong.
It was not great. It was not a great time.
Could you imagine the amount of experience you'd get for killing 2 player characters?
Well, the dragon killed them.
Well,
but I picked up their bones, and she's gonna try to get diamonds to bring them back someday. I need really good diamonds, and I need really high level spell slots that she can't do, but we'll get there. Boy. One of them was also another temp character that was also dead, so you know, only one long-term player character died.
So
is that all?
Yeah, it seems we've all killed a lot of people in our character growth.
Oof.
Yeah.
Big oof.
I mean, how do you grow if not through trauma? Am I right?
Yeah.
So we've actually kind of answered my next prompt, so I'm going to skip forward a bit here. So how do you, or how did you, communicate your character's growth? Or like, if that's through action, or if that's something physical, like.
That's really an interesting question. In terms of Nell, I think a lot of it because character growth is so internal, it also is internal for me, the player.
Exactly what I was gonna say.
I've come to some decisions, and that's no one else's business but my own. But I think ultimately what it does is just it affects the decisions I make going forward in the role play a lot. So it's like if something was presented and all of a sudden I'm grappling with it, like I let that influence like how I respond to things. Like if I was before like I like definitely know this thing and I can respond with like, I can't think of the word, confidence. Perhaps like after something like messes it up, I start to like waver and be like, I actually don't know if I know what my opinion on this is anymore. So
yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going to say too. I feel like the way I play my characters is very like personal. Yeah, it's very internal. I have my own feelings about my characters, and I don't know if I feel like I've been trying to do it more with Dicely, but it's not something I normally do at all, is like explain like how a character might actually feel in a moment. It's very much for me a lot of times just like in my own head, like, oh, I like this probably changes this about her. So yeah, I've been trying to do it more lately, but I think yeah, like Christy was saying, it just affects how I make choices in the future and how I respond to things going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think that's necessarily like bad in a way. Like I'm also like there's been a few times in Play Dicely where I've been like, oh, like Nell feels this way about this now, whatever. But there's a lot more impactful stuff that's happened kind of behind the curtain that I simply like don't feel like sharing yet, because like she doesn't really understand it fully, and if she's just beginning to grapple with it, like I don't need to be like, hey guys, Nell's trying to figure this out, because I know it's a long-term thing and I'm curious to see like how it plays out. Like here you go, this is a mini spoiler like example, like I guess it was 2 episodes ago, I can't remember what exactly it was, but I think I was talking to Elowen and I said something about how like things are so like fucked up out in the real world, like nothing is easy, there are no easy answers anymore. And that was like a fun moment, because it was partly like me being like, oh, me Christy actually has that same feeling that I probably like I've had for a while but like don't really like vocalize, but like just like kind of being struck by like how true that was for Nell, because she really like felt like everything was like very straightforward, and then it's not at all, and she's like, I don't know what the fuck to do anymore, like. And so I think that just is going to continue to influence her going forward. So
yeah, the reason I asked this one is like, I suppose this is probably because I've got a bit more of a DM mind, because I know Dallis, I don't believe you've DM'd, Christy, you've DM'd only maybe once or twice.
One shot, yeah.
Right.
I DM'd one shot as well once.
Hell yeah.
Right, and I feel like being a DM GM, like I've kind of got that mental mode of GM almost all the time, even when I'm playing characters. So I like to like kind of put foreshadowing, like something somebody else, like another player character can, like if they notice, can like nudge, and maybe it won't be the right time for me to be like, yeah, you can ask about that, but maybe at some point later on I'll be like, yeah, you've noticed that, I'll talk to you about that now. Like this Mickey's story there, where after he killed a lot of people because of his naivety on morality, he's like, his outfit, which had been predominantly purple, he like abandoned and basically went goth. Like he let his hair grow out, kind of become a bit unkempt. So he had a bit more of a sinister vibe to him, and I took levels in Warlock. So these were kind of my communications to be like, Mickey's kind of on the edge of falling away from goodness. And as that story went on, it turned out that his father had been kidnapped, and I made a decision for myself that if things went terribly, that I would basically just let him go, be an NPC, and become a villain.
Oh,
that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, yeah, now that you described that, that does remind me of kind of like a mid-campaign thing that happened where we were fighting like the current big bad evil, and I died. I can't really remember. I feel like it was very quickly. Like I feel like I died like really early on to that battle. So then when we were coming back in, like we knew we'd be doing a lot of like a little downtime session. I was like, man, like what does this mean for Ravi? Like what is she up to? It's like part of one of my downtime activity things was well, one was in private, which we had found this like cursed like helmet or something that I had, and I put it into a chest that like had an arcane lock on it, because I was like, who knows, if things get really hard again, maybe Robbie will decide like that's the only way I can do something about it, is just put on this evil helmet. The other one was that I went and I got like a diamond that would be enough for a Revivify, and like had it made into a necklace, so I always had one on me.
That's a good idea.
Hey, I'm really stressed out now all the time and I might die again, because at the time like our cleric didn't have Revivify stocked. So yeah, so I think there are kind of like subtle things you can kind of do in character as well, but yeah, I guess like I don't always necessarily think about it as like telegraphing it to the other players. It's more just kind of like me generally being like, what would I be doing in this moment, so
Well, yeah, I mean, like I say, like, how do you communicate character growth? But it's more like an easier way to think of it would be based on the experiences that your character has now had. How have they altered their ritual, kind of? And that's a great example of like I have experienced death, therefore I did not like it, so I will make sure in my best ability to prevent that from happening again.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think before we move on to the next, this kind of ties into what we've been talking about, but we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll see y'all in a few seconds. So be right back. Hi there. Do you have a podcast you'd like to promote? How about sponsoring an episode of the Speak Dicely podcast? If you'd like to get in touch with me about including an ad during one of our episodes, contact Denny at dicelychannel@gmail.com. Now, back to the podcast.
No, it's good. We're fine. Go ahead.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Well done, Christy. Yeah, so we were beginning to move our conversation of character growth here in a direction that I'm very intrigued to hear both of your responses to this. So this is something I typically do when I'm prepping a character, but do either of you plan out your character's story arcs? What is your opinion on that practice?
No.
But
no, this is the note, actually, Denny, when I was reading your notes, that I was really surprised to read that you planned out your character arcs, because I definitely don't. I think this is what I was saying before, is I think I come in to a character and I have a character and I have like either a flaw or like a goal for them, and like that's kind of what I work off of. And then everything else, like I'm thinking Elowen, I can see a number of different directions that her character might go. And like I guess I knew going in like these are options, but like even I think as we play, it continues to change. The way that the other players talk and act is changing my opinion of what I think Elowen is and cares about and stuff. So yeah, I think I come in with a character and I prefer to just like let it grow naturally from that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Like I guess I'll need you to explain after I talk, because I want to talk first, but I'll need you to explain like what you mean when you say you plan it out, because I personally like can't imagine how that works in like as a player in a D&D setting, because I think that's like too much of me trying to dictate how the story goes when it is supposed to be collaborative. And part of that collaboration is like being influenced by the world, by like how things pan out, like what the other characters are up to, and the kind of interacting in character with them. So yeah, very much like I have my backstory, like I plan out kind of like these are her like quirks, like these are the things that she like her flaws, whatever. And yeah, a goal or like something that happened at home that like has sent her out into or sent them out into the world. And then from there it's just kind of like, okay, like let's see what happens, because I think that's more fun. And that's kind of oh, I lost it. Never mind.
Well, to explain kind of what I mean, and actually, basically, what Dallis described there is kind of what I'm getting at. It's not like this is a story from A to B that I'm going to tell, but it is more like we start at A, and I foresee ending up at B, but in reality, there is that big swath of the middle, which is of course the game, that can make that veer into, oh, I guess C is an option now. Oh, I guess D is an option now. Yeah. Nice.
Sorry.
Nice volley. That was great. Did I say volley? I meant folly. Wow. I'm an audio guy.
This is what I said. Should I record at my booth? You'll get better audio quality. And you said, no.
It's fine. It's fine. Can we get another take of that? No.
Yeah.
You can only be so lucky. But yeah, so it's like, I have no problem like being like, okay, what is my beginning and how do I foresee the end? Like that Mickey Tumble Run example I just gave. If things get incredibly dark, he's going to become a villain. That's where I foresaw it. And like kind of Theodore Ray, which was pirate crewmate with Dallas's character of Shadow. He experienced character growth when he realized that his infamy as a pirate lord had waned, so he wasn't that person anymore and wouldn't be recognized that person anymore. And I foresaw him kind of sacrificing himself in some capacity, but I didn't know how that was going to be. But I had envisioned a redemption story for him. And it was a tough fight to get there. And when that became more clear as to what that was, it shaped as to how it shaped out. Like Michael was going to sacrifice his character, and my guy was like, I cannot allow that to happen. But getting to that, because we had also experienced a lot of in-party fighting and that kind of stuff, and there was the real threat of my character just being kicked out of the party, I had also envisioned if that had happened, he would become a like pirate hunting warlord. Like that was what I like, just these grand endings kind of thing. Like just having an idea of where their story is going, because if you don't know how the story will roughly end, it can go on for probably too long or longer than it deserves to. That's kind of my opinion on it.
Yeah, I think.
Well, and I mean, like, I'm sure we have all heard the example of, I'm going to retire this character now because they've completed their goal and it doesn't make sense for them to be adventuring anymore. That is the end you now realize.
Right. Yeah, I guess like I do, I guess, make like hypothetical decisions, but I almost feel like I kind of know that maybe they won't necessarily like come to that. And perhaps like the few times that I've tried to like almost like force a thing hasn't really gone well. So I've kind of like, okay, like that's fine. But like my earlier example, talking about how I had that like helmet put aside in the box because I thought, oh, maybe I'll just have to be evil if that means like in the greater good, like it'll accomplish what we need to accomplish. That was like my plan, and I hid it from the other characters as well because I didn't like want them to talk to me about it because I wanted it to be like kind of like my little secret thing. And then like within a session, it totally like did not happen because our like main city got invaded and we had to like teleport away. And once we got like to where we were going, like the people in the other city were like, oh, you have something very like magically powerful on you. And kind of out of character, I was like, is it the helmet? Like, and then it wasn't. And I just like blew my cover, like, okay, they know I have it. And then so like one of the other characters later, like started talking because he had the like body armor part that goes with the helmet, but each had like separate pieces. And his character started talking to me about like, oh, like maybe we should like all wear this armor, and like I'm happy to do that. And then once we started like talking about the morality of it, it really made Robert be like, you know what, no one gets to put it on. Actually, this is fucked up that you're even saying it. And like I totally disagree with that. And it's just like, wow, that was fully my plan too. But hearing someone else like say it back to me, I'm like, no, that's not happening. We have other options. So,
yeah, the thing with this strategy, the big thing is because the reason I've got no problem with planning this out is because this is like a team game, and it's if you plan out your story and it's just you, the story will go as you dictate. But because there are other players and there is the GM, it's almost never going to go the way you plan it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess that is like pretty similar then to like how Dallis and I like have a goal set. So I think you're thinking it more like, at least the examples you gave, then you seem like more kind of like mid to end game decisions, like where they are now. This is where I could see it going. Like if these things pan out this way, where I was thinking about it more like the beginning of the campaign stuff. I'm like, I feel like I'm too fresh that all I have is just my goal. Like I simply don't know what's going to happen. Like in Play Dicely, for instance, like I know what Nell's goal is, but is it gonna work out? We'll see. Like it's really hard to say. And I think like in that context, what makes like the game fun is giving your DM the big decisions like of your character stuff. Like I gave you like what I want for Nell, and like now like big things you're presenting me are all surprises, and that's really fun because I think it like keeps it interesting and not me being like, okay, like now the next thing that's going to happen is this, and then we're going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing that's important, is not to create specific events that need to occur or creating an adventure for the DM. It's like, no, that's what works about this is you leave room for discoveries. Like you have an idea, but you don't solidify. That's not your job to do that. And oh dear, I also had a thought and I lost it. Oh bugger. Oh well.
Well, yeah, I think kind of what you're saying is I think it's cool from a character perspective as well, because I think like this goal or these like kind of ideas that you have as a character, as a player, are like what your character like 1,000% is like, this is what's happening. This is what I'm going to go do. But you as a player are like, but I know that this is not actually probably what's going to happen. But like playing your characters, if like setting off on this adventure, we're going to do this goal, and then, you know, watch how that falls apart around you.
Yeah. And I think too, it could also speak to like each player's personality as well, because I'm someone that if you were to ask me like, where do I see myself in 10 years? I don't really have an answer for you. Like, it's just like, I'm like bad at like visualizing things that I feel like I have no context for. Cause I'm like, I don't know, like there could be so many different possibilities. So it's really hard for me to be like, oh, for sure it's this. So I feel the same way with like Ravi, because I think like we're definitely in like the end arc, which it's still going to be like a while till it finishes, but we're definitely like getting to that point. And like the players were talking about like, okay, like what do you think like retirement looks like for these characters? And I'm like, oh, I have no idea. Like I've only ever imagined like Ravi like doing this adventuring thing and like seeing this to its end, and then after that kind of like, I don't know what she could possibly see herself doing afterwards. Like I think she'd be pretty fucked up by everything. So it's like hard to think about.
Marry a queen. That's my advice.
Oh, I would love to. I think right now my most likely like romantic prospect is a lovely dwarven blacksmith, but she's currently imprisoned, so I have to rescue her first.
Sounds romantic.
So
oh my.
Yeah. So I guess maybe I'll just be like a blacksmith's wife, whatever that means. To watch my wife like making swords, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was truly something that flipped Shadow's entire trajectory, was meeting Ishizu in that campaign and falling in love with her. Because that was not, you know, I've never played D&D with the idea of like, oh, I'm gonna fall in love today. You know, that's never been my thought playing D&D. Right. So that was totally came out of the blue. And then as it happened was like, oh, actually, this is really an interesting like moment for Shadow. And like, you know, now that he has other people and this like lady in his life, maybe his father's approval doesn't actually matter so much anymore. He's got all these other things going on for him.
I love that for Shadow.
Character growth.
Yeah, character growth.
I think I like to enter a campaign being like truly open to anything in a way, it's like, who knows what's going to happen? Maybe there'll be a romance. Maybe this thing will happen. I don't know. I'm just very like excited to be like, my possibilities are endless. And because I think that's the fun. It like feels like, in a way, like an open world video game where I'm like, ooh, there's so many different paths and choices I can make. Like, let's see where it goes. So
yeah.
Good luck,
it's
DM.
It's probably even better though.
Well, yeah, because it's like truly like obviously like open world in the video game context. Like, well, there are limitations on the world because you can't just have like an endless thing. But when it's like a fantasy imagination game, it truly is endless. So I just think that's so much fun.
If I were that DM,
I'd
I'd just be like, I am planning nothing, and this is all based on like, if you're just gonna follow anything, I'm just going to react.
Oh boy. Well, I like being guided a little. Like I obviously like want there to be a bit of a story, but
yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like talking about that kind of planning out the arc things, like some of the quick examples I want to give that people could like use as inspiration to come up with these kind of things. Like we've talked about the end, like really the beginning is just character development. You can't really like you guys were saying, it's hard to foresee that far ahead when you still don't know who your character is. So really that planning the arc proper really does come after a little while. But like if you've got the idea of maybe your personality shifts or your alignment shifts, like those are big changes in character growth. And like other ways of foreshadowing, like I did, like that changing of clothes and taking on a new class, like that in a way was planning the arc. It's like I took these classes because of something that happened, but also because I foresee it being this tipping scale. So, and the reason I think planning out a character arc is a good thing is because it makes the story more grounded, more concrete. It's had more thought put into it. And when you apply yourself more to something, it creates a better investment into it. So you become more invested in the story. And when it's more concrete and you're more invested, the DM can make player-specific quests. We can learn about the characters more deeply through these. Players get to the other party members and impact and react to these specific player adventures. And like I already said, it'll never unfold the way you envision it because of this extra outside involvement.
And that's the fun part.
Yeah. I think that's maybe something for people who don't always necessarily understand like the concept of making a backstory or like why it's necessary. It's like, well, I just have this kind of like cool character gimmick. Like, can I not just drop them in the world and see what happens? I'm like, oh, but like so much fun comes from like giving like in a way like some mysteries to your DM, and the DM is the one that gets to make the decisions on them. Because like be totally different if I, again, no spoilers, if I had like given you like a much more like fleshed out version of like Nell's stuff, her situation, because then it's like, well, I've already, I guess, planned out how I see this going. Whereas instead, like now, like again, like I said before, like I get to be surprised by everything, and then I'm forced to react in character. Like, okay, so what does that mean? Like, how does that make me feel? And I think there's just like such a joyful experience to be given like your own like work back to you in a way, but improved upon. You're like, whoa, I like planted this seed. Now I get to climb the tree. Boom, analogy.
Yeah, like in the example of your character Nell, it's like I could ask you questions and I totally don't expect you to answer these like here. But like if, for example, like your character's big thing is you're having an issue with magic. So it's like if I ask you, do you envision yourself at some point being able to master this thing within you? Or do you fall victim to whatever this chaos within you is? And if you have an answer in mind, or at least an idea, subconsciously you can begin to kind of convey that in your actions, in your thought process, in your descriptions, and the DM has a better chance to pick up on that.
Interesting. Yeah, like it's the way you ended that question threw me for a loop, because midway through I was like, oh, I have an answer for you, which is that I don't know, which is not an answer, but in the sense that like I don't feel like I know enough about it yet to say for sure. Like, and so I think right now, like the main goal that Nell has is to get to Brolbar and investigate in the library there and see if there's any answers. But I don't know what I'm expecting to find, or if it's even going to lead me anywhere at all. And like, who knows what could happen from between like now and then that might impact like the relationship. Like even like in the last episode, when you said that whatever that presence I felt was more like an aspect of myself and not just like an external thing. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, because I literally like literally that day I had been writing in my like character journal that I keep like in character as Nell. And like, I had just gotten to the point where we had that interaction in the bedroom. That sounded a little inappropriate, but, and so like, I had it like right now, it was like what she wrote was just kind of like, who are you? Like, you know, like, why are you doing this? Like, have you kept me from having this connection with Fira this whole time? And like, I'm fucking coming for you. Like, I'm gonna fucking get you out of there, and you're not gonna mess with me anymore. And then, so for you to say like, oh, it's actually part of like you, I'm like, sorry.
Yeah.
Like, but I was really hell-bent on getting very angry. So now I don't know what to do with that anger. So
well, I mean,
yeah.
With that, well, exactly, with that information, what do you do with it? Do you become logical and go, okay, if this is me, how do I work towards it? Or do I project? Do I say, no, that can't be right, and just denial? Like, these are choices, these are potential arcs. And yeah, they won't come up right away, but once you have the right information, you can begin thinking about these possibilities.
Yeah, I think that speaks to like, I don't know if I actually said it here or not, but I was thinking it the whole time, where a lot of what happens in a session, like it takes a while for me to like intrinsically know what it is that the character is going to do. Like, I'm still not fully there. Like, I'm feeling more and more confident every session with now, like, okay, this feels like where she would go. But even you presenting, like, would she logic it out, or would she like deny? I'm thinking like, well, I have presented her as being academic, so maybe she would logic it out. But like, there's a lot of emotion based here. So now I'm thinking like, I actually don't know what the truth is. So it's almost like I need more kind of like environmental stimuli to kind of dictate for me like how she's feeling. So
a third option is just saying, what would be a more interesting story? And
that is also true.
But
yeah,
that's up to the individual player.
Yeah. And I guess like, I want your opinion now too, because like, I do feel like we talked about this in improv. I like to trust in my like improv instincts. So sometimes I'll say a thing or do something and I'm like, oh, like weird, that felt like maybe out of character. And I think about it, I'm like, no, I can justify this and I can explain, and I can use that then to go forward and influence. Like when we went to the train construction area and that one woman wanted to fight, and I was like, yeah, I'll fight you. I was thinking like, whoa, is that really something like Nell would do? And then I was like, you know what? She's really emotional. She's got a lot of stuff going on. And like, maybe she's like, oh, you want to like fight? You've never been in a fight before? Like, I'll give you one. Like, I know how to fight. Let's do this. And so it didn't like pan out, because I think it became like a thing about Gideon wanting to do something, I think, or I can't remember, but
I don't know. Some other player came into the picture.
The best.
Which is fine. And like, so it was like an interesting moment, because afterwards, like I was thinking like, that was interesting. So I don't know. I like to see how in the moment I say things. I'm like, okay, where am I taking this now?
Well, I mean, yeah, that improv skill is something that people pick up after a while of either doing improv training or just playing like D&D a lot. Just making a choice is the important thing. And with these arcs, do not be afraid to adapt or even abandon an arc that you were thinking is the very likely course. Like I was talking about Theodore Ray earlier. His initial arc in my mind He was a pirate lord. He wanted to get back into it. He wanted to get revenge on the crew that mutinied against him. It was a revenge story. That was my initial thought. He was going to be much worse than he really was. And then the moment when he talked to a person and they like, I don't remember the pirate lord of my guy's name, that was the pivot. Redemption story from then on.
Mm-hmm. I guess there's also an interesting thing too, like if you are in character vocalizing, like I'm imagining right now for Ravi, like she has this whole thing with the former head of the university where turns out surprised he was a demon, and now she feels responsible to like deal with that one way or another. So part of me is like, oh, I could see it being like a final fight if he's like really corrupted or something. But so if like the whole time leading up, I'm like, oh, we're going to fight, we're going to do this thing, whatever. And then this moment comes and instead it's like a conversation or it's something like unexpected. That's kind of cool story-wise too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot to think about how I play D&D now.
Can I talk about something? Can I like go off the rails a little bit here?
Let's do it.
I'd love it if you did.
This doesn't, I maybe should have brought this up earlier, but I have this thing. A lot of the DMs I've been working with lately have introduced this idea, this thing that I don't know if I totally love. And because I think it feels like it inhibits character growth to me, but it's possibly just the way I've played it, but it is the feat for a flaw system, where at first level, a character can take a feat, but they also take a flaw. And in my experience, I feel like I played Zesha before she died. Rip. Where she was a princess, Shadow's daughter, it's a queen's daughter, she was a princess. But she had always worked with like diplomats and like people in royalty. And so the flaw I took was that she wasn't good at communicating with commoners. So she had disadvantage to social checks with commoners. And at first level, that made a lot of sense to me. And then I took like the Sentinel feat and I was like, great, super great fighter. I'm ready to talk to kings. But then like as the game started going on, I started realizing that I spent like months traveling with commoners and I still had not learned how to talk to them. And I was like, now I've made a mistake. And like I was saying, I think is like one of the things I like about a character is like having a flaw at their beginning. And I think characters should have flaws. I think you should create characters with flaws. Those are really awesome, interesting characters. But I think the interesting part of it is them like either overcoming those flaws or being consumed by those flaws, whatever happens. So I suddenly had this character who's kind of just a dick and I couldn't figure out what to do about it. Because I was like, because of this like mechanic we built in where I took the feat, I don't feel like I can drop this flaw. And I'm sure, you know, if she hadn't died, I probably could have talked to Logan at some point and been like, what can I do to like actually remove this flaw from her? Because it's just not making sense anymore. But I feel like it's a really interesting mechanic, but I do worry that trying to choose a flaw, a permanent flaw for a character before you ever play your first session with them is really tricky. Like I'm thinking about because Elwyn doesn't have one. You offered this to me and I didn't take one for Elwyn because I was playing Zesha at the time and I was like, this has not worked for Zesha and I don't know if I want to do this again. But it's like, I don't know what flaw I would have taken, but I don't think it would make sense anymore. Because I think what I thought Elwyn was before we started playing is not really what she's ended up being. And then even Elwyn after session 1 or 2, I probably would have like gone with a more like anxiety-induced flaw because she was very anxious the first couple of episodes. But I also like, I don't know, it just like, I don't know if I love the idea of a character having like an intrinsic flaw that they will never, ever, ever get over no matter what you do.
Mm-hmm. I'm really glad you brought this up. And it's definitely a conversation to have with like a GM if they're using this kind of system. And like in Christy's example and Logan's, like the two, I've talked with them and the flaws they've got are totally able to be overcome. Like that is a conversation we have had. And I don't even mind if like a player takes a feat and it's like, well, because I got the feat so early and I'm therefore powerful, I should keep it. It's like, if it's not fun, do away with it. But yeah, I totally see where you're coming at on that one because that was very unfortunate. And
I think Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think in a way, I like because the flaw I took, like I loved that system, but again, I'm so role play based that like I truly didn't take a feat that was like helped me be a better like fighter or anything. Like I took linguist because I'm like, oh, Nell reads a lot and she's in a big clan, so she knows a lot of languages because I'm a little nerd and I'm like, I don't need her to be a good fighter yet. Like she's not been out in the world, but whereas like the flaw is just kind of like a more aggressive version of the wild magic because I really wanted to be like, I really wanted to be fucked up, you know? I'm really into that.
What's a trauma?
But like, and then like that did dictate so much of like how I built out the rest of the character in terms of like casting magic and like how am I going to cast magic, to the point that I almost think Teni was like, I need you to not actually be taking your flaw this intensely. Because of the amount I was trying to like figure out and like justify stuff, and you're like, you can make this fun too, you know, like if you're like finding your character is like not playable, and I'm like, no, I can figure it out. But like almost in a way that was fun for me because I was like, well, I've really established some stuff and I want to figure out how to make it work now, even though it is difficult. So it was mainly the level up was the hardest part because I was like, I can't justify leveling up Paladin right now, but that's what I want to do. How does that work? Mm-hmm. So we had a long conversation about it. So I think, and perhaps like Teni in that moment was like, I wish you hadn't taken a flaw.
No, I still love the flaw. We've had some great moments with your flaw so far. And you know what? It's funny now that since we're having this conversation and now that we're talking about like this flaw for a feat conversation, it's almost like to do this is to specifically go into that planning your arc and doing that incredibly early. Like it is now a touchstone of, do I know how I'd react in this situation? Well, now I have a flaw that I can kind of tune into. And you kind of have to first see in the example of like, you had a flaw that's like, you don't know how to talk to the common folk. Yeah, that's an unfortunate...
I should have maybe thought it through a little bit more.
Thought about what you were going to be doing in the campaign.
Yeah.
I almost think like, and this is almost tooting your horn, Teni, because I had an idea for the flaw, but you're the one that like built it for me. And I think it works in a way because it feels like it's a mechanical based flaw that can like lead to role play moments versus one that's like specifically dictating like the role play. Like I'm bad at talking to this person and then having a mechanical like disadvantage, for instance. So like, I don't know, because like the flaw I built is like part of like the class that I took and like everything, like it's just kind of like amplifying it in a way, but I get to choose kind of like my reactions to when it like goes off or like what happens.
Yeah.
So
I feel like
that's the difference.
I feel like moving forward, what I should do with that system, instead of being like, here's a bunch of flaws, you can choose one of them to take a feat, I should more like collaborate with the players and like really help them flesh out their backstory. And based on that, be like, okay, now that we have you figured out, do you want to take a flaw? And then build it on that like plot. That's something to overcome. A nervous tick, anxiety. In the case of Nell and Azaria, crazy magic or lack of magic. Like, you're right. You two specifically have flaws that are great for storytelling and less impactful on your role play.
Yeah, and I think it is very nuanced in that way because, like, I guess like I was planning the arc because like I knew that her like weirdness with magic was the whole thing I was trying to explore, so it felt like an opening less than like a limitation. But yeah, I think like one in the style that like you gave Sesha is very kind of like, oh, no, I'm in this box. Like,
yeah.
So I think like collaborating and figuring it out that way would be helpful.
Yeah, we did collaborate. I think it was the first time anyone I knew had run this rule. So I think it was just none of us had thought through entirely what this was going to end up meaning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in the future, either like talking with the DM about how a person could eventually get over this flaw, or having a less less roleplay heavy flaw.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like, I don't mind if the players take the extra flaw at the beginning anyway. I just get to throw harder stuff at you guys.
Yeah, I feel like I build my characters with flaws either way. Um, but if it's not like mechanically built into the character, I have a lot more flexibility about how I am perceiving this flaw to work. You know.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because like obviously like this feels like flaw with a capital F versus just like the regular flaws that you incorporate. Because like I also still have like some of like the basic flaws, but even that those are like proving to be like really fun because like one of them is like helping people to the point where I'm not considering like my own safety, which we've seen with Abe and some of our interactions that perhaps Elwyn was not really a big fan of.
I just don't want to see you get ripped in half by a robot. I don't know. Am I crazy?
Maybe.
You're all blowing it out of the water.
So I don't know. I just think there's so many like fun things that you can do. But then again, like, you know, I do agree that there are some times like I've picked a thing and then like halfway through been like, I guess I'm not really using this and it doesn't really feel relevant anymore. So like having like flexibility in it is good, especially if you can then justify it to the GM with like a role play aspect. So.
Right. Well, with that, let's kind of begin to wrap up this conversation. And I'm going to pose to you guys this final question. And just to kind of summarize everything up here, why is character growth important in tabletop role-playing games?
Sorry, this is the wrap-up?
This is the wrap-up. Yep.
Oh, okay. Didn't realize wrap-up took like an hour. But, oh my God.
I mean, I think it's interesting because I guess on one hand, I'm like, does it? Like, it's important for me. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it is important for everybody. Like, I think like we were saying before, I don't think I would want to play a game where I don't have like that kind of like story arc. But other people, I mean, I think it is still important, I guess, in just the mechanical leveling up sense so that you can feel stronger and fight bigger things. But I don't know if it is like a must have at your table if you don't want it.
I'll counterpoint, I think, or not like parallel point. I think like it depends, I guess, like what you're entering a TTRPG game, like what you're planning on getting out of it, like what you want from it. Because I don't know, like for me, I always really want like a big story. And I just like read so many different things of the ways that like D&D and other TTRPGs are used to like help people, if that makes sense. Like there's like the stories of like guidance counselors running games with teens because a teen can't in real life say like, hey, I'm having these problems, but can they role play it as a character? Yeah. And like they will come to conclusions and they'll figure things out and then realize how it applies to them in real life. And I think that's really incredible. So like for me, character growth often it's like, I don't know, like I guess like I'll like sometimes like put in an issue that like maybe like I have in real life or like I would like to like experience in a hypothetical way, and then you get to see like how it plays out and how you would react to it in certain ways and like learn something about yourself in that sense as well. And I think, I don't know, that to me is like everything. So
yeah, and these are both valuable points. Like you don't have to have character growth to play the game. It's kind of a well, like you said, like it depends on what you want to get out of the game. It's there if you want to take your storytelling to the next level. Like getting good, is that even the right term? Understanding how character growth works in as you play through the game. It'll help you feel like you're actually going on a journey, like physically and emotionally. You'll learn things about your characters and, like Christy was saying, possibly even about yourself, the player. And like it makes for interesting stories. Like you have conversations about like, I don't know, certain topics that at one point in the campaign you think this way, but at another point that changes. Like you begin to trust magic, or you feel differently about a faction that you had been an antagonist of earlier on. Stuff like that. Like I don't think a character should Well, and again, that's just a personal opinion. You can just be a character who is consistent and predictable. But those are more like shtick characters, and those are a tool of the dungeon master, I think. It's great to have a joke or a character who is, they are the villain or they are an ally. But if you got the shtick character and they're a constant presence, it can become tiring.
I think almost it presents like a opportunity for like inner reflection for the player that's presenting that character, because like I would ask them to look at themselves like, do you think that you have remained constant even in the past, say, just 5 years? Have you just been the exact same person? I think if you were to look back, probably not, because that's just not who people are. Like, you're constantly changing. And I think there might be some people who are very rigidly against it, but it's going to happen kind of either way. So it's almost like try the game of like bring in a shtick character that won't change and then actually like react to the world and see kind of like where that shtick character could go, Can
I counterpoint again?
Yeah.
Please.
It's a game. But does some people not just want to come and like have a good time? I want to be like the hero. And I just want to fight things and be a hero. I'm going to start a hero. I'm going to end a hero. Like, do people, because like I'm counterpointing you, but no, I play your way. I am also, D&D is therapy. I'm here for you. Yes. I know this. But I think like, that
I'm trying to like put myself in that person's shoes and I'm like, I guess so. But in my mind, I'm like, but the hero's journey is you start from something.
Agree.
So, but again, like if you're just like, oh, I just need like let off steam by like, killing a bunch of giant spiders or something, like that's fine. Like the like the World of Warcraft of like D&D games, like for sure. But I don't know.
I just don't feel like every person needs to feel like they sit down to play D&D and they're like, okay, what emotional trauma am I gonna like handle today?
Yeah.
Like, I think you can just sit down and have like a silly fun game and you don't have to like think about deep character growth. I mean, we're playing a game, the three of us are also playing a rodent themed adventure in D&D. Like, has Big Mama experienced great character growth in that time?
Well, I met like an eldritch like squid god, so that was pretty impactful.
That's true.
I think but no, I guess you are right. Like I yeah, you did put me in my place just there, because I wasn't thinking about it in that context, because I was fully thinking about it in like my 2 big campaign context. I'm like, I could imagine playing those for like 3 years and not having growth. But yeah, for like if it's like kind of like and even that doesn't have to be just like a fun silly thing, it could be a regular game. If that's what you want from it, that's fine too.
Mm-hmm. My counterpoint on this one is
counter.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I should add, this is all correct. Like, whatever you play the game for, right. You're right in how you play, as long as the table you're playing with agrees. Like, if your fun is ruining someone else's fun, that is how you play D&D wrong. So hopefully you've got a table. If everybody's just wanting to beat some spiders, great, you've got your table for that. If you want to explore specific traumas and have darker storylines or more emotional contexts, great, you've got your table for that. The rodent thing, though, this rodent campaign, it's not my usual one. That is to say, Adrian, love this campaign. I'm excited for the story to be done, though, because Professor Nacho is not a character I have had any growth with. I just wanted to be a buff wizard.
Yeah. But I think that's the point of the campaign.
Exactly.
Yeah, I also agree with that. Like,
we're not here to grow. We're here to be rodents and discover the burger mysteries of the world.
I want your perspective as a DM, Teni, because I almost wonder, is that like more work for the DM to have a thing like that? Because like Big Mama is not contributing to the story of this world. Like, it very much was that, like, I feel like Adrian had like the plot that we were going to do, and it was like kind of felt like it was more linear in that sense. So is it kind of like in that sense like, oh, I have a story for you to play through versus I have a story for us to tell together and navigate that way?
Yeah, I do feel like this particular plot example, it has been, I think it's probably more work on the DM for that game because it's not informed by external minds influencing the world and the storytelling. You set up a world, you set up things for us to interact with. So we're just going through it. Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a more difficult way to DM. So kudos on him.
Like if you have kind of like, oh, I have a story in mind and I just want to see people like wreck shit in it, then that's valid too. Because it really all just comes down to play style. Like,
again, you got to have a group that's into the idea. Otherwise, go write a book.
True. Yeah.
But we've had some great moments in that campaign.
I love that campaign.
I mean, it's been a blast. It's been
I love Adrian campaigns.
Crazy as always.
Just the absurdity. Like I loved just while a fight was happening with some like nightmare creature, I just photoshopped like a teacup on a tricycle with lightning hands and a single eye, just because that's what we described the monster was. And then to put that out there, oh god, that was so funny.
I forgot about that.
Just silliness. Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway. This has been a conversation on character growth mixed in with like ideas for your games and I guess opinions on play style, I suppose, and GMing style. So hopefully for the people out there, this was a good topic to come in on. And before we do the finale, I've got one final question, and this actually comes in from @AdrianForever on Instagram, the very DM we were just speaking about.
What?
And
wow.
His question is, seems like one of the monsters D&D is most famous for is the Beholder, but it's just a flying circle with a bunch of eyes. Why are they so proud of it? So we can answer this, but I'm also going to expand on this question by asking, have either of you fought a Beholder, and what is your favorite monster you've encountered?
It's just really calling to the fact that I have such a bad memory.
I know. I can't recall ever fighting a Beholder, to be totally honest. I'm sure it's happened because I can imagine what a Beholder fight is. So I'm sure it must have happened. But
did we fight something similar, like a smaller version of a Beholder in Nathan's campaign while I was still there?
I don't know. Maybe. Maybe that sounds about right. But the thing I always think of with Beholders is in our pirate campaign, we befriended a Beholder. Like, so in my mind, Beholders are friends, which is maybe not the right way to do this. But, and it's funny Beholders came up because I think this was actually when I was building Elwyn, Beholder was one of the first patrons I pitched to you. I was like, can I have a Beholder as a patron? Because I wanted to do this like knowledge-based thing, and Beholders are like collectors of knowledge. And you said, absolutely not. That's not what you said, but you came up with a much cooler patron for me. But my original pitch was a Beholder because I think Beholders are neat and I think they're friendly.
Oh, wow. It's how I feel about dragons. They're not evil. They are my best friends. And to present an evil dragon to me is very rude and I won't accept it. So
yeah, that idea of being collectors of knowledge was very much a specific world lore of Beholders, where in reality they are xenophobic, paranoid hermits who zap anything that comes within range.
Well,
but
that's their truth. So,
but Dallas, we did fight a Beholder in Logan's pirate campaign as well.
Did we also fight one? Was it the same one?
The island we turned into a resort had a Beholder on it.
Oh yeah.
That charmed you, and you almost killed me, and I realized you were incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, that was Shadow's shtick, was getting charmed and trying to kill Teni. And you wonder why we had problems.
It's because I kept having a sword through my abdomen.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I forgot. Oh, yeah. There were 2 Beholders in that campaign.
Yeah, it was bizarre. And that was a random encounter, too.
Yeah, the Lover's Retreat.
Stupid random encounters. But yeah, I think D&D's proud of them because they are floating balls of with plenty of weird abilities all wrapped up in one creature. They suck.
Yeah, and I think they also like look like just cool and scary from like a distance, like from an outsider's perspective as well. You get the idea of an eye with a bunch of eyes, right? I think it's spooky, it's kind of intriguing to just anybody.
Yeah,
I think it presents like an interesting like opportunity for the players, like how am I going to like do this in a creative way, because there are so many different things that their various eye stalks can do. So it's like, okay, how do I plan for that, or like what do I do in the heat of combat?
Yeah, and it's a very original creature, so that's probably why D&D's proud of it.
I'm trying to think now of my favorite monster that I've fought, and I simply could not tell you because I truly remember nothing. Can I tell you just like my favorite fight that I've done?
Sure.
But it wasn't a monster.
That works.
It was the Feywild arc that we were in, my home game. Part of it is like there was something like wrong with like the Winter King, and so we had to go to his court and figure out what was going on. And so it was like we did have to fight him, but in a way like that it's like, oh well, he's like not being this way on purpose, like something is happening. So I used one of those orb spells that contains and things can't get through to try and do that and like talk him down. So I thought that was, I like combat where it's not just like you have to just like fight and that's it. It's like fun to find like creative ways of doing things.
Yeah.
Wish I could tell you about a monster. I simply cannot. So.
You know what monster I really want to fight though is that lion with wheel legs.
Oh my god.
That's really what I would like to see. They talked about it on one of the earlier episodes, and I would really like to fight this monster.
Yeah, it was in the episode about fighters. It's a monster called a roving mauler. It is kind of a lion starfish. Ferris wheel, actually, is probably more accurate. It's stupid.
I have to look this up.
Oh boy, I can't believe we're revisiting the roving mauler.
Denny, if one doesn't show up in the Dicely campaign, I'm going to be really upset.
Christy,
I'll just let you know right now. This is what I want.
Not what I was envisioning from what Dallis described.
It is a lion Ferris wheel.
All right.
They're so cool.
Oh, I am not
Can I
throwing
have one as a
of those.
familiar?
Oh,
Jess,
wow.
What is a familiar?
No.
Can I have one as a familiar?
Oh.
It just rolls around behind me. It's so stupid.
I'm into that.
Fuel.
It's just like a small one.
Right. Element has no way of creating familiars, but I'll figure it out if I have to. If you'll let me do it.
God, I'm
So
not
upsetting.
letting that abomination into my setting.
Ooh, if I eventually level Paladin up enough, I can
Summon greater steed.
I can summon Steed.
Please. Oh my god.
Okay.
Where do you even sit on it?
No, it's kind of like running on a barrel. You have to just like hop across the feet as it like cartwheels along.
I love it
Really,
so
like,
much.
more work than just walking.
Yeah.
Absolutely it is.
So useless.
Oh my,
my
goodness.
God.
Wow. Okay. Well, with that, that's going to bring us to the end of this episode of Speak Dicely. So thank you both. And I'd like to give you the chance to plug any social media or any projects that you're working on. Where can people keep up with you? Perhaps we'll start with Dallis.
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at Dallisaur. Oh, look, it's right down there. You can also find me on Instagram as Dallis MacKenzie. You can find me as Dallisaur or Dallis MacKenzie, basically anywhere you look.
Yeah. It's the same. My Twitter handle is below here, so CBK Clow, and then you can follow me on Instagram at Christy Clow. And I have a YouTube channel, and eventually I will continue to make videos for it. It's only been like 8 months since I've made a video, so one day.
In the meantime, I'm sure you both will continue appearing on the Dicely D&D channel and other affiliated things. So
I imagine you'll see us around.
I hope so. I hope I don't get fired.
Yeah, like that'd be awkward.
Oh gosh. Well, thank you both for coming in to talk about character growth. This is a great time.
Such a good topic. I would like to talk more about it. So
yeah, I talk characters all day, every day.
Yeah.
And for everybody else out there, if you'd like to keep up with Speak Dicely, follow our social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch as Dicely D&D. If you'd like to submit a question for the podcast, send an email with your question to dicelychannel@gmail.com. And thank you everybody for tuning in. My name is Denny, and I will speak Dicely again with you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This episode of the Speak Dicely podcast was produced and edited by myself, Teni Brant, and the intro and outro music were created by Salik Brant. Thank you for the support, and we'll see you next time on the Speak Dicely podcast.